Everybody, welcome to another episode of Windshield Time. You wanted me to get to a high octave. Where we help you use your windshield time to turn learning into earning. Windshield Time is brought to you by Service Excellence, and I am the host and controller, Chris Elmore, and I'm joined, as always, by Harold James Walker Jr., known affectionately as J-Dub, from the sister podcast, J-Dub Ruins Podcast. Today on the podcast, we are going to be talking about the true cost of a service call. Don't go anywhere. I think we cut there and put a music bed in. I'm not sure, but whatever.
Am I allowed to talk now?
You can talk now.
Okay, good. I tried to give you free reign on that first go round, and it still sucked.
I know, but I was tense. I was waiting
Sure.
for you to talk.
Well, you know what? So maybe next go round we'll get a better one.
So, as is our wont,
Yes.
WONT with no apostrophe.
Mm-hmm.
We usually have some sort of conversation about something ahead of time, and we've been talking about music a lot lately.
Yes.
And so we asked Alex, our producer, give us a topic. He said TV shows.
Oh, man.
And so
Golden.
I said iconic TV shows of your youth. Now, for those of you with no video and can't obviously tell, I will be 54 in July, and you are
46.
46. So there's a little bit of a gap
Mm-hmm.
in the age there.
Yeah.
But we did agree on one thing.
Yes.
Well, we agree on a lot of things.
Sure.
But in the iconic TV shows of our youth, which was the 80s,
Sure.
for me more than you,
Right.
your cartoon was what?
DuckTales.
DuckTales, and we sang the theme song together.
Yes, we did.
Which I'm sure Alex has that somewhere. Bury it. But so DuckTales, Scrooge.
We need to
McDuck.
have like a way that people can pay for extra footage, because I feel like all of our best stuff is going to show up on
There
the
is a way.
cutting room floor.
There is a way for that.
Oh yeah. Venmo? What?
Or Cash App.
Cash App. I'm with you. Okay.
Zelle.
So Zelle, we were
Zelle is
talking
another
about
popular one.
DuckTales. Yeah.
Okay, so DuckTales was the cartoon.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we came to an agreement. We weren't saying it's our best ever favorite from the 80s.
Yeah.
But we agreed that near the top of the list is Airwolf.
Oh, dude. So
Great
good.
theme song.
Phenomenal theme
What
song.
are some other iconic theme songs of shows? Obviously, the opening of The Office, Cheers,
Yeah.
even though I didn't recognize it earlier.
Right.
What else?
Well, if we're talking about Magnum PI,
Sounds just like it.
down. Oh, we played Chips. I can't believe you didn't get Chips.
Chips.
Is my favorite. Chips. That was my favorite show, man.
Chips was good.
They had to like go to a junkyard and get like 60 cars, because every single episode they had like a 93 car.
Well, that was
pile
pretty
up.
much any 80s
Right.
action TV show.
Sure.
Was the car jumping off the ramp
Right.
and landing and breaking itself
Oh.
in two, but they cut right before it broke in two.
Right,
And then all of a sudden it was just going.
It changed
I
to
mean,
a sedan, like
yeah.
you see it as a black limo,
Or
and it turns into a Honda.
Clearly, a wheel was parallel to the ground,
right.
but it was still driving when they
Right.
cut away, because they always cut to the chase car and then they cut
Yeah.
back to the car
Sure.
that did the jump. I mean, the Dukes of Hazzard was like
Okay, just some good old boys.
that. That was Waylon Jennings, so that's just
Never
good anyway.
meaning no harm.
But so there you go.
Yeah.
Iconic TV shows. That's what our conversation was about.
$50 Cash App.
$50, and we'll let you see videos of those, or pay us nothing and watch them for free on YouTube. So there you go.
There you go.
But do you remember G.I. Joe, the G.I. Joe cartoon?
Yeah, I played with GI Joes more than I watched a cartoon.
Well, there was a cartoon. and
Knowledge is half the battle.
No, close.
Knowing is half the battle.
But at the end, they would say, "Now you know," and knowing
Is
is half the battle. G.I. Joe.
Greatest American
Go,
hero.
Joe.
G.I. Joe is there.
Yeah. So all of you millennials and what came after millennials?
Extennials.
No.
Gen Z.
Was it? It was.
Gen Z is after millennials.
What am
right?
I? Gen X. I'm Gen X.
You're Gen X. I'm an Xennial, which is
'Cause you
between Gen
overlap.
X. Yeah.
Okay, and then
If you're born from
millennial.
78 to 82, you're
And
an
then
Xennial.
after millennials, what is it?
Gen Z.
And then Gen Y?
And then, yeah, Gen Alpha is what they're calling it now.
What is my grandson?
Alpha, or maybe even beyond that. I
He's
don't
only
know.
2.
Right. It's still yet to be defined. Gen non-existent
Well, I
because
think
the world
typically at
devolves.
2 years old, most things are yet to be undefined, aren't
Sure. Yet to be defined. Yes.
they? Yeah, yet to be defined. That's what I meant. Okay.
It's 54 there for you, ladies and gentlemen.
So for all of you younger people, you won't know what we're talking about. Maybe you will. Maybe your parents have talked to you about those kind of things. And if they haven't, shame on your parents. for not-
Seriously.
You don't know what Airwolf is, Alex? He says
he does.
He says he knows what it is.
Now he's
but
like,
again,
I do know what it is now.
But
He said
again,
under his breath.
the indignant tone he uses is like,
There's some vitriol.
you just stole $100 out of my wallet. I did not. You don't know what Airwolf is? I do too.
Methinks he doth protest too much.
That's not how that goes.
That's how it goes for me.
That's how you say it, but what play is
You
that
can
from and who wrote
Hamlet.
it? You think so?
Yeah. And Shakespeare.
Are you sure about that?
I'm sure about.
Are you sure about that?
I'm sure about wishing I could say things on this podcast that are going to get cut just because.
You can say anything you want on this podcast. I think in the history of this podcast, the epic history of this podcast, and remember, we used to have Loudermilk on here.
I'm not allowed to use any 4-letter words on this podcast.
We used want.
What?
That's a 4-letter word
Right.
that most people have never heard.
Dumb often pops up. Okay.
Yeah, that's probably in your head.
Was it not Shakespeare in Hamlet?
Yes, but how does the line actually go? Do you know?
No. It's not methinks doth protest too much.
Methinks the lady doth protest too much.
Oh, gotcha.
Maybe. I don't even know if that's how it goes.
Right.
But Hamlet was an excellent play.
Yes, it was.
Shakespeare kind of knew what he was doing.
Mel Gibson.
That was Franco Zeffirelli's cut of it, and that was all chopped up.
Well, that was my kind of reference.
And you didn't have Fortinbras of Norway coming at the end. You didn't have all that other
Agreed.
noise going on.
Sure. Something.
But still, Mel Gibson was great.
Denmark. What are we talking about? Cost of a call.
We're talking about today the true cost of a service call.
Nice.
And we're not talking about it from a owner standpoint or whatever. We want to unpack it a little bit because we get questions from technicians about how much does it really cost and why do we have the main thing is why do we have to charge so much?
Yes.
Why,
and I just had a conversation with a plumber 2 weeks ago.
Tell
and
us
he's
about
like, we're charging $4,850 for this water heater scenario, and my competitor is charging $2,500. How in the world do they do that?
Well, let's address something right away. We're just going to go ahead and say it because I don't want to go through this whole podcast and people think we're ignoring something.
Okay.
There are people who charge too much and rip people off. That may be happening in your market. I don't think it's happening at your company, but that does happen sometimes.
Sure.
So to think that, it's all so virtuous all the time, it's not.
Oh, yeah.
But if you work for a conscientious business owner, certainly companies that work with us,
right,
conscientious and things like that, and most are. That's what I found. Most of the companies I've come across in my 25 years doing this, they're reputable. They want to do the right thing, those kind of things.
Right.
So, but that's a common thing. Why does we charge this much, but this company over here charges this much for the same job?
Right.
Well, I think, number one, naive to think it's the same job.
Sure.
Number two, they might not have the same cost your company has.
True.
And that's why we want to talk about that part
Cost
of
of
it
a call.
first. But then we also have to talk about the value that we can bring because we have those costs.
Yeah.
Right?
I had a guy put this scenario in once, and I thought it was interesting. He said, if we were buying a car, I can look up a Ford F-150, and I would see it at Apple Ford and at Johnson Brothers Ford, and I'm able to make discriminating choices based on price because it's the exact same truck because it's coming from the same factory.
Yeah. Same options, everything. You can look it up online.
If it wasn't coming from the same factory, but Apple Ford had the technicians to actually put it together, and they had to put the truck together at the Apple Ford and Johnson Brothers Ford, you would then make a decision not on the truck primarily, but on the people's competency to put that truck together well and stand behind the work done.
Yeah.
And there is some component to that. Well, I'm just throwing in a water heater that's, everything from the design, the creation, the installation, the fulfillment, the actual work being done to fabricate that solution is being done by the shop, not, Bradford White or
Mhm.
not
Mhm.
Goodman Amana
Yeah.
only, right? And so there is a place where, well, yeah, I would be a lot more thoughtful and critical and be willing to pay more for the people putting it together. We can allow that to bleed into our process as well when it comes to cost, that you are assembling a package that is defined by your expertise in design, installation, execution, and then follow through on the end of it, as
Yeah.
opposed to just a box thrown in on a Wednesday.
Well, to put that in a nutshell, the whole job, not
Yes.
just the water heater. It's the
Right.
whole job. And if you think about end to end, what's involved? Well, we've got to procure the water heater.
Mhm.
We've got to transport it, right?
Mhm.
Which involves people and cost to do.
Mhm.
Whether it's you going to pick it up before you go to the job, or your warehouse guy picking it up, or the warehouse or the supply house delivering it to your shop, whatever. There's procurement costs involved in it, getting it there. There is the cost of your time, and then we start talking about the cost of the technician,
Mhm.
and we factor in, oh well, I get paid X amount of dollars an hour, and that water heater takes me 4 hours to do or 6 hours to do, and the water heater costs this much, and yeah, there's some odds and end parts and stuff that go with it, and I can't make it add up to what we're charging for it.
Right.
Well, it's probably because you're not considering all the costs. And there's an exercise that's been going around for years called the 100 pennies or
Sure.
whatever, and we break down how much of every dollar goes to what in the
Right.
company and how much is actually left over at the end of the day.
Sure.
And if you do that and you look at the fact that some things are fixed costs,
Right.
some things are variable costs,
Mhm.
and fixed costs are just that. They cost that, whether no matter how much you sell it for, they cost that thing.
If you do 0 revenue this month, you still have to pay
You
that
still have to
cost.
pay those things. And
And variable costs it's variable because depending on how much revenue we sell is how much we're gonna have those
yeah,
costs.
and so a way to think about that is a, v- um, a fixed cost or overhead is those are the things that you pay for. Those are expenses that you have because you're in business.
Mhm.
You're open. Period. You're open and ready to do work.
Right.
That's what those costs are. And you pay those before you do anything because you can't be open and ready to do work without spending a certain amount of money to be in that position.
Right.
Now, costs, variable costs, are things you pay for. These are costs you have because you do business. So, for
Yes.
instance, you have labor because you, the technician, are going to do work. You're going to
Yeah.
get paid. Because you're going to do work, you have
Materials,
material
equipment that you
costs,
sell,
equipment that you buy, supplies you need. So you have to buy those.
which you wouldn't have if you didn't sell anything.
Yeah, if you didn't sell anything, theoretically, you wouldn't get paid to do anything because you're not doing anything. You wouldn't buy anything from a supply house. You would never roll a truck and use gas. Nobody would earn commission.
Yeah.
And so when you look at those, and we're not going to break all that down for you on here, but we're just letting you know that there's an overhead cost associated with being in the trades, being
Mhm.
a business in the trades that's open, ready to serve customers. And so you start thinking about what all those things could be. Well, you got to have a location because you got to have a place to put stuff. You have to have phones,
Yeah.
which means you have to have a person sitting by the phone.
Right.
If you want the phone to ring, you've got to
Marketing.
advertise. So you have to pay for advertising and marketing.
You have to have like a CRM tool. You have to have
You gotta have
forms.
Yeah, you have to have
Right.
those things. You have to pay for insurance
Yeah.
because your vehicles have to be tagged and insured.
General liability.
You've got to have liability insurance before you go out there. You might have to have workers' comp. You got to have benefits for the people that you have,
FICA, FUTA, SUTA.
all that stuff. And so there's a lot of expense that goes into a business just being open. And that's one thing we got to remember. And so when we're going, well, I get paid this much and the water heater costs this much and the supplies cost this much, you're scratching the surface on that. I mean, fair enough. It's
Sure.
probably half at the worst. It's probably half of the money
Yeah.
is what we're spending on those things.
Right.
But we're probably spending, out of every dollar, ideally, we spend about 35 cents on overhead. So think
Yeah.
about that. So whatever that water heater price was, about 35% of that is going to just keep the doors open
Right.
and be ready to do work.
And that's at a really good place.
That's good, efficient
Probably
place.
not throwing a ton of money at marketing either.
Yeah. And so then when you look at the costs, Well, probably about 45 to 50% of every dollar on average.
Sure.
Could be less, could be more, depending on the type of job and the type of work. But about 45 to 50% of that is spent on the things involved in doing the work. So someone sold it, there's commission. Someone's doing it, so there's pay. There might be a apprentice involved, there's more pay. There's fuel for a truck. There's tools. There's equipment, supplies, materials,
subcontractors, permits,
warranties. There's
financing
finance
fees.
charges. All those things go into cost, and you don't have any of those things if you don't do work.
Yeah.
So overhead is because your company is in business, ready to send you somewhere. Costs are because you're doing something, period. That's as simple as we can make it. And I've said it before. You might have. There's a clip going around of me saying that, the technical work we do, that's a bit like rocket science. The financial and figuring out the numbers is not rocket science. There's plenty of stuff and help for that to happen. What we want to do with this is you, maybe the salesperson or the technician, anybody in home, going in the home for sales or service, we need you to understand what is there. And this is also not a pity party for owners.
Yeah.
Okay. It's not that. It's just clarity.
It's an understanding. So my conversation when I have this meeting with my technicians consistently is the reason we set our prices where we set them isn't because we decide to keep raising our prices until the little old lady has a heart attack and then back off $5. It's because we look at our hard costs and build out exactly what we need to get so that we can hit a certain profitability point. And people are saying, well, profitability, well, it's like a Ferrari for the boss. Typically, we're trying to target 10 to 12% profitability pre-tax.
Bottom line.
That's even before you pay taxes. And now we'd love to hit 15%. And you're like, well, what, again, is this the owner going on vacation? What you do with profit is that goes back into new vans. That goes back into better
it's reinvested in the business, but also you're paying debt with that.
Well, and you're paying off debt, right? So if you got a small business loan, if you're paying off notes on the truck, you pay that out of your net profit.
That comes out of your net profit because, again, this is another financial topic lesson, but when you borrow money, you're borrowing your own future net profits.
Yes.
And so if you're not making net profits, how are you going to pay it back?
Right.
Because that's what you're doing. You're saying, give me the lump sum now, and I'll pay you back a little bit each month out of my profit from using and investing the lump sum you gave me up front.
Right.
And so typically in a well-run, orchestrated business, very efficient, making a very healthy net profit, we'll let you under the covers here. The owner of the business, they're probably making a salary, but that should be commensurate with their risk and their responsibility. So they're typically going to make one of the high salaries in the business, right? It's fair.
Right.
But then they're getting paid for that because they're always on the hook. They're always where the buck stops. They have all the responsibility and onus on them. And not just financial, but their reputation in the community is on the line too. And so because of that, they get paid fairly. Now, when we talk about net profit, we don't want to say that, oh, woe is the owner, they don't keep any of that, because they do. Some of that's left over at the end, but it's not as much as people think.
Right.
And so let's just break down, we've kind of given an overview, but a typical service call. So if we're talking about a call where, and I want to address new customers and address existing customers. So if we get a new customer and they're calling us because something is broken, how do they find us? They find us because we advertise.
Yeah.
We do marketing in general, but advertising is a function of marketing. And they found us online. They found us on Facebook. They found it. They got an email. They got a piece of direct mail. They saw a yard sign. They saw our truck. They heard from a neighbor. Whatever. There's a call. There's an expense that goes into marketing and advertising. Marketing and advertising, you need to look at that as the ante that you put up. Like if you're playing poker, if you want to play in the game, you got to put a certain amount in the pot.
Right.
You've got to do that. And so you're leading with a bet, and you have no idea what you're going to get for it.
Right.
You don't even have your cards yet.
Right.
And you're anting. So that's what marketing and advertising is. Now, of course, you could raise that to try to have better odds of winning and a bigger payday. So think of it like that. but it's not guaranteed.
Right.
Okay. And so, just like a poker player that sits down in a game of Hold'em who has played online and has studied the endless combination of cards they could get and starting hands, and they've developed their
Strategy.
system and strategy of, okay, if with this many hands, I'm going to play loose or tight or, whatever. You hire marketing companies, you study marketing and all this kind of stuff to try to increase your odds with the smallest bets possible.
Right.
To win the most with the smallest bets possible. That's what marketing and advertising is. Now, what's happened over the years used to be, what I would say probably around 2004, 2003. That's where really it was that transition period between Yellow Pages and internet.
Page, yeah.
But, 30 years ago, whoever had the biggest Yellow Page
Double
ad.
truckers, yeah.
And then you did radio, TV, you did direct mail. You still did yard signs, and you still did door hangers and things like that. You still did outbound calling and promotions, things. You still did that, and you still should do a lot of that stuff today. But the internet changed things in that it made it really easy and really inexpensive to market and advertise a business. And then the transition started happening as more and more people were playing, just like the Yellow Pages.
Yeah.
If you don't have a big demand, the prices aren't going to be that high for an ad in the Yellow Pages. But if you've got a market like DFW where there's a Yellow Page that's 6 inches thick and there's literally 1,000 companies vying for different space, the price goes up.
Right.
So same thing happened in the internet. So what it used to cost to market and advertise, it is now 3 to 4 times more dollar-wise, not percentage-wise, but dollar-wise than it was per call.
Right.
And so today, if you add in all the forms of marketing that a company does, it's probably costing close to $200, $250, sometimes even more, depending on the market, just to get across the threshold.
Well, let me just throw this out there. So guys, like, well, $300 right now, pay per click, depending on what it is. You put your name at the top of the list to show up on a Google. If somebody clicks on that, you pay.
Well, pay-per-click, for those of you, just a refresher, is you're paying to be in the sponsored links at the top of a search result.
Right?
So that's what you're paying for. And there's other places you can pay to be in the maps, you can pay to be in the Google Preferred, etc.
Well, let's just put that simple scenario. You right now, depending on the search word content or whatever, it might be $75, $100, right?
It's probably more than that.
If they click on it once. Once they click on it, that takes you to a website. How many times have you guys gone to a website?
Well, it doesn't cost. Hold on, just to be clear, it doesn't cost $100 for the click. For the conversion, it might cost $125, $150.
LSAs, where you pay for the leads as opposed to, but it used to be pay per click.
Yeah.
You pay for the click. They go to your website. How many times you got to a website and not actually called the person? So if you have 1 out of every 3 people actually calls you once they click, then that's a $300 cost. Then that phone rings, and 85% of the time you actually roll wheels once that phone comes in, you're already at $350 cost just to get in front of that customer for the first time, right?
Yeah. And that's why it's so, as you know, it's so important to turn over leads for bigger ticket items. It's important to get membership
and so
versions, those kind of things.
I ask this question to my technicians, and I'll ask it to you. You know the answer, but tell me the thought process that goes through a technician's head. If it costs us $350 to get in front of a customer, how much money do we have to make before we don't lose money?
Well, I know the answer to it.
Right. Most technicians think $350.
Well, but that doesn't include.
We have to pay for labor. You got to pay for materials. You got to pay for vehicle fuel. So we're saying if that makes up 50% of the job, that means I need to make $700 on that call after I lose the $350 for labor, for parts, for vehicle, everything else. I now can cover that $350 charge. It cost me $700 to make $0. And somebody goes, how in the heck would we make money doing this? Well, that's a great question.
Volume.
And first, if I told,
and longevity of customers.
Longevity of customers, right? So the first thing I would say is one, if I told you to go make $700 on every single customer or else, there's no way that's even ethical. You might have a flapper that's $230 or whatever it is.
Mm-hmm.
So the only way we make money in that scenario is to be effective, thorough, and retain that customer in a long-term strategy of membership so that they call me back out or I go back out and I don't have to pay that $350 again.
Exactly.
And then I get the water heater 3 years down the road. I get the water faucet 2 months down the road, right? So otherwise, this becomes a losing proposition really quick.
Yeah.
For
and
owners.
If you think about the think about it like this. Let's do some. So let's say it costs $250 the first time you show up at a new customer's house. It's $250. Okay.
Yeah.
You go there, and plumbing and electrical, your average tickets are over $1,000, $1,200-$1,500 range most of the time, but you're
Sure.
doing fewer calls.
Right.
And there's not you're in the house maybe once a year for any kind of membership
Sure.
things. HVAC is a different story because it still costs you $250 to get in the house the first time, but if you sell a membership, you're going back 2 more times. So think
And
about
you're not paying for that $250 again.
that. Well, that's exactly right. So you go there the first time for the repair, you sell a membership, you end up back in that house at least 2 more times in that year,
Right.
or in the next 12, 13 months. Then that means negative $250 the first time. Forget anything else that you pay for, or anything else
Right.
that you collect. You're negative $250 on the first one. You're even on the second one. You're $250 ahead, which allows you to spend that $250 on getting a new customer.
Right.
Okay. And in that lifespan of that customer, over 3 calls, you got to repair. Average ticket for HVAC companies national is probably $350.
Yeah.
So you spent $250 to get there. You collected $350. Okay. So you're $100 positive, it seems, but you're not, because
You have to pay.
we still had to pay for a bunch of other stuff.
Right.
The next time we go for a membership visit,
Mhm.
we sold them a membership, so we're getting $100, let's call it.
Right.
Okay. So now we got the $100, but we didn't pay to go there. We didn't pay for that call, the $250 that it cost us to market and get in that house. No, we got in that house, and they paid us $200 for a membership that includes 2 more visits. We got $100 per visit. We go there. We don't sell anything. Okay. So now we're $200 positive in revenue with this customer at this point.
Yeah.
Okay. Then we go again, same thing, $100, and we don't sell anything. Now we're $300 positive in revenue with this customer in a year.
Yeah.
If we didn't sell anything, we didn't make any money.
Yeah.
On that customer for that year. Now,
Sure.
customer renews. They pay us another $200.
Mhm.
Now we're second year. Now we're up, okay, $500. $300 the first year,
Although
$200
to
second
be
year.
fair, you do have a cost attached to going out and running that membership.
You do, but I'm not counting that. I'm only counting the
True, just top line revenue.
yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, and well, just in terms of a marketing expense, just to further illustrate that point. But the point is, each subsequent time we go, it cost us less per call to that customer to
Sure.
be there.
Yes.
Because we spread everything over the life of the customer. Just like we spread everything over all of our customers, all of our calls throughout the year.
Right.
Because if you just isolated certain calls, you'd lose your shirt on
Right.
certain calls. If you go out to a house and you charge $89, $99 diagnostic fee and you don't do anything, you lost money.
Right.
If your average ticket as a technician is not over $300, it's costing the company money to send you to the calls you're going to. Now, with electrical and plumbing, $1,200-$1,500 average tickets helps a lot.
Sure.
Okay. With HVAC, what we need the membership sales, but we also need the accessory sales, the ongoing maintenance things like blower wheel cleanings, coil cleanings, that kind of thing, accessory sales. But we also need the lead turns.
Yeah.
Because we need those lead turns. And just to throw some real quick stats at you, most HVAC techs are going to do 750 calls. Most plumbers about 600. Most electricians 500. Okay. Most plumbers bare minimum 600 grand a year. Most electricians bare minimum 600 a year. HVAC techs $300 ticket average. You run in 50 weeks a year, 15 calls a week. What is that? I used to be able to do the math in my head. So it's $7,500 a week times 5. What is that?
Lord have mercy. Off the top of my head.
I don't know. I'm not doing the math right. But the bottom line is, if you run 750 calls, the bare minimum number of replacement leads that should be coming out of that, the bare minimum is 75.
Mhm.
More than likely, it should be closer to 150.
Mm.
Okay? And you might, oh, well, it's whatever percentage of the calls I run, whatever. It is. It is that number.
That's 10 to 20% was what that number would be.
Yeah. And so if you're doing those things and we're getting those replacement sales, then we're generating commiserately HVAC, plumbing, and electrical, because most plumbers are going to do more than 600. Most electricians are going to do more than 600. So we're generating somewhere between 750 and a million usually.
Yeah.
With seasoned people in the field. And so we've got to do those things. And that's why a water heater for your company might be $3,800, where there's one guy in a truck that works out of his garage down the road. I'm not saying he's not a good plumber. I'm not saying he's not licensed. He might even be insured, but he does not have the being in business cost
Yeah.
that your company has. So consequently, he can charge less, but he also, because he doesn't do some of the things that you do in your company and have the quality of people maybe, or the abundance of people, there's not as much technical training. Maybe they're not using as high quality equipment or tools and whatever. There's lots of different things. There's a certain level there's a certain standard you're able to uphold on a mass scale as a large, and I say a mass scale, a single truck plumber working out of his garage with a helper, he might do 500 calls a year because he's going to be selling things that he then has to do, and he can't sell more while he's doing.
Right.
Where you got 10 plumbers.
Yeah.
You're selling and doing. You probably have a few plumbers that all they do is do.
Right.
You probably have some plumbers that they sell more than they do.
Right.
So you just have a scale that you're able to do these things on.
Right.
But that costs money.
Sure.
And you're able to provide a quality service, a quality product. You're able to stand behind it. And if that customer has a problem with an install of a water heater, you can send somebody right away. It doesn't have to wait until one guy who did it, who's the only one available, can get to it. So there's a lot of that kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And so, but also growing the business, when the owner is taking the financial risk, the reputational risk in the community, and essentially they're putting everything they have on the line, backing up this business, they deserve a fair return on their money. And so growing the business is how they get that, because, hey, maybe you're listening to this and you're a small company owner and you have 2 or 3 trucks. And, maybe you're making 150, 200 grand a year when it's all said and done, because you in the business, you're the same as when it comes to revenue and taxes and all that kind of stuff. I know a lot of guys who are comfortable at that, and that's what they want to be at. Great. That's awesome. There's nothing wrong with that. But if you want to scale that and make more, you have to scale your business, which means you have to pay more to be in business when you have more people.
Sure.
And so that's why a water heater from a company maybe $3,800 in a market where you're seeing a smaller company do $1,950 installed. Well, maybe they're not doing the code upgrades that need to happen. Maybe they're just advertising that price. Or maybe when they went in, their deal is, I just want to get hot water for the customer. I'm not interested in making sure they're code compliant for the next several years. Yeah. Maybe this guy's not getting it inspected and you are, whatever the reason is. And again, just like I said, obviously, this is not a woe is me for owners, and there are some people who charge too much to rip people off. That happens. There is also small 1-truck, 2-truck companies that do great work at a fair price.
Yeah.
So we're not saying that that's the norm, that they don't.
Yeah.
But there are reasons in your business why you have to charge what you charge, and the true cost of a service call is not just about the components you see. That's unfair, because think about yourself as a technician out there. You spend a lot of time and effort to get trained where you are. Okay, that's cost you blood, sweat, and tears and money over the years. Yeah. I know for me, I went to apprenticeship school. I went 3 nights a week, worked full-time during the day, went 3 nights a week for 3 hours for 36 weeks a year for 4 years. That's time that's over 1,000 hours I can't get back if I wanted to.
Right.
Because I invested that in my education. And sure, the company I worked at the time paid for the apprenticeship, but I still had to invest my time and energy into it in order to get the benefit. So when you go to someone's house and they go, why are you charging me this for that water? That water heater is only like $450 at Home Depot. What's your first thought? My first thought was, well, wait a minute, I got to get paid, right?
Yeah.
So that thought, you, the technician out there, that thought, wait a minute, I got to get paid. if you're questioning why your company charges what they charge for that water heater, that same thought is going through the heads of owners and managers of your company,
Yes.
because they're going, wait a minute. Because you're going, well, I know how much the water heater is, and I know how much I get paid, and I know how much the materials and supplies were for me to do this. Why are we charging $3,000 more to do it?
Yeah.
They're going, hey, wait a minute. We got to get paid.
Yeah.
Hey, wait a minute. We got to pay bills.
Yeah.
So that thought is there too. So everybody in the situation has a perspective on price.
Yeah.
But it's important for us that you know that there's more to it than meets the eye, and it's not because somebody's getting rich or manipulating somebody, right? Same thing for I could say the same thing to a customer. Why are you charging $4,000 when this guy over here, I saw a water heater online for $2,700? Well, you would say it differently, but the same argument holds.
Sure.
Well, there's more than meets the eye to the cost of this installing this water heater for you. It doesn't mean there's something underhanded or manipulative and somebody's getting rich.
Right. So stick with me on this. If you've got a job that is $4,000, there's 2 points I want to make. $4,000. One, you've got material costs, labor costs, overhead costs, and we sit there and we're like, well, it's $4,000. If we just knock $500 off this, let's get this for $3,500 or whatever else, right? The only thing that changes, your material cost doesn't change, labor cost doesn't change, overhead doesn't change. The only thing that changes is your profit, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Just for easy math, we're targeting 10% profitability.
Okay.
That means at the end of that job, we have netted as a company $400 that we need to pay our notes and everything else. You knock $500 off, you are now minus $100 profit on that job.
Mm-hmm.
So the thought process is, well, let's just knock price. Man, it's only $200. If you're getting 10% profit, ultimately, $200 off a $2,000 job is all your profit.
Yep.
Right? Now, secondarily, there's other stuff that you hate.
Now, there's nothing wrong with doing that once in a while because, again, I'll say what I said before, which is it all goes together to determine profit, not just an isolated service job or install job.
The thought process is, though, is like, dude, let's just knock off a couple hundred. You can, but there needs to be a calculated risk. It needs to be understood and even just pre-planned for, right? Like, hey, if this is where I want to be on retail, but this is where I can go to on a discounted rate if I needed to or whatever. And I'll have guys ask me, should I reach and get that job? I was like, let's look at cash flow. So there's a lot more machinations going on behind the scenes.
Machinations. Alex, hit me.
Whatever. Okay. But what I would say is also, I'm sure nobody's ever had a job that had a shark bite leak. I'm sure nobody's ever had a job where a ceiling caved in, right? And I've just had number of calls come back. Right now, I had an $8,000 job on a water heater that we did. The water heater was a $3,500 installed or whatever. $8,000 of damage that the owner has to pay out of pocket. Now,
or insurance.
What that is that's not a percentage of business. That is true out of, well, he didn't want to do it out of insurance because now that's going to ratchet up your rates and everything else, right? So yes, at a certain point, you do it through insurance. But if you're out of pocketing that thing, if you're making even $400 profit, that's how much is that to get to $8,000? I can't even do that off the top of my head. 20 jobs?
16.
That's okay. 16 jobs that you're going to have to do just to make up for that and get back to zero on profitability.
Yeah. And that's the thing. And that's why pricing is important. And when prices go up, it's a reflection of the need for prices to go up, not the greed of an owner.
Man, we are full of these today. That was a great one. That was a one-liner.
Really?
It's based around need, not greed.
Would you say applause or DJ horn on that?
DJ horn.
Okay.
We don't need I would say DJ most horn. Of the time, I know he's got a
one.
DJ horn. I would say most of the time, especially with owners that I work with, because of the price sensitivity of different things going on, they're not like, here, keep raising. They're saying, what can I do to stay profitable and still be reasonable enough to get people to say yes?
Mm-hmm.
Most of the people that I work with aren't like, yeah, let's raise this money. They are more, I won't say more price conscious, but they're more thoughtful than you probably give them credit for when it comes to setting the price point of where we need to be just to make it.
I don't know about you, but most owners I talk to, they don't like raising prices because it's awkward for them.
Yeah.
It's awkward.
Now, one cool benefit of that is this. If you're able to get around that price point in your own head and you have any type of commission-based, production-based pay, you don't even have to do anything better. If your prices go up 20%, you get a 20% increase in revenue and income, right?
Yeah, and the argument against the opposite argument of that, not against it, but the
Sure.
opposite argument is, well, yeah, but if prices go up, I sell less.
Well, sure.
It could happen. So, it's just like anything in economics.
Yes.
It has different impacts in different areas that you don't expect, but you're trying to solve for a particular problem,
Right.
and you're going to have intended and unintended consequences. And raising prices because you have to, because costs went up
Mm-hmm.
to preserve the profitability dollars you need to hit, might mean that you sell less of a certain type of job, but more of another type of job.
Sure.
So,
And one last thought on this. So if we lower our prices to get cash flow coming through the business, you get more jobs, just theoretically, right? On this, if I lower it to $100, I get 1,000 jobs.
Yeah.
If I raise it to $1,000, I get 100 jobs. What that means, though, in that exact scenario, you have 10 times the amount of headache, of driving, of
risk.
paperwork, of risk.
Mhm.
If I have 3% of the time I've got a callback, my callback just went from 3 jobs
Mhm.
to 300 or to 30 or whatever it is, right? And so just realize that there are times that you need to say no, not because the money might not make sense, but because the accompanying risk, effort, and just entropy attached to that is going to
Entropy.
exponentially. Yeah, entropy means it's the propensity of it's the propensity of something to move towards a state.
Just keep it going out.
Move towards a state of disorder rather than order, right? So things fall apart.
So kind of like
I'm tired of being judged for being
from the beginning of the podcast to now, things fall apart.
devolving. Think of the word devolving.
J-Dub Entropy's podcast.
That's right.
But no, that's a good point. So this is the takeaway from this conversation is that we realize pricing is a struggle for some people. It's a struggle for customers. It's a struggle for technicians. It's a struggle for owners. But just know if you're working with a reputable company, if you're working with a conscientious company that truly lives their core values, price increases are done out of necessity, not out of greed. They're not done to pad the owner's pockets. They're not done to gouge people, okay? And there's several, that's a totally different topic, but what goes into pricing, majority is the math.
Right.
Okay? But then you get into things where the math may indicate you've got to charge a price you're just never going to get.
Right.
And so what do? You sacrifice. Then that means there's other things that you have to raise the price on.
Sure, to compensate.
To compensate for that. That's just the fact of it. And how you decide that is based on a lot of different factors. But if you're a technician, you're asking yourself, why do we charge so much for the jobs we do? And you're only looking at it from the standpoint of what you see.
Yeah.
That's not the full picture. And there's a lot more that goes into it. And most of it is just so you can be in business, ready to do a call.
Mm-hmm.
And so, especially now with what's going on in the economy, and we lived through all the COVID stuff and the supply chain interruptions, and mega price increases on everything and scarcity of things. There's a lot of economic theory that's gone into why prices are where they are today compared to where they were 6 years ago, and there's uncertainty right now. So, price increases, price adjustments are just going to be a fact of life.
Yeah,
and just like they've been since COVID hit.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're wondering about the pricing, here's the other thing. Go talk to your owner. Go talk to your manager.
That's what I was going to say is most of these shops have owners that are going to be responsive to that. Some of them won't, but most of them want you to buy in and understand why costs are where they are.
That's right. They are. All right. As always, good conversation, J-Dub.
It's a first.
It's not a first. It's not a first. Why would you say it's a first?
Just to get a rise out of you.
Okay, flat top truck. So if you want to know more about this, we do have some pricing blogs and things on our website, www.servextra.com. You can contact me, Elmore at servextra.com, or 254-733-7109. If you need the next best answer,
Yeah, James at serveextra.com or 254-230-5266.
Do you think Alex would get in trouble? Because we wouldn't get in trouble. We have plausible deniability
Sure.
here. You think Alex would get in trouble if he outroed us with the Airwolf theme song?
Oh, well, there's no way we could do that.
No, I don't think so. Well, there's a fair use, and I can't remember how many seconds of a song you can use. But anyway, we'll let Alex work on that. So, James, what do we do here at Service?
We
Excellent.
push all liability over towards Alex, the producer of the show, and we also turn learning into earning.
Yes, we do. Thank you, J-Dub. Bye, everybody.